I've been lurking on Reddit for years, and I've seen my share of creepy stories. I never thought I'd have my own to share, but here I am, typing this out because I'm not sure who else to tell, or if anyone would even believe me. This isn't just some ghost story, it's about the dark web, a place I wish I'd stayed the hell away from. It started about a month ago. I was bored out of my mind, stuck in my small apartment due to the pandemic. One night, after binge-watching every horror movie I could find, I stumbled across a subreddit dedicated to dark web stories. Most were about scam sites or creepy encounters, but one post caught my eye. It was a detailed guide on how to safely explore the dark web. Curiosity got the better of me and I thought, why not? Biggest mistake of my life. I followed the steps, downloaded Tor, got myself a VPN, the whole 9 yards. My hands were actually shaking as I clicked through links, each one a promise of forbidden knowledge. It was mostly junk, old books, weird but harmless forums, and a lot of dead links. Just as I was about to call it a night, I found a link marked simply, "Watch this." No description, nothing. And like an idiot, I clicked. It loaded a video stream. The quality was crappy, grainy, and flickering like an old VHS tape. It showed a dimly lit room with concrete walls, completely bare except for a metal chair in the middle. And on that chair was a man, head slumped forward. He looked unconscious. The camera was static, no movement, just this eerie tableau. I should have closed it. I know I should have, but I didn't. Then the man lifted his head. He looked straight into the camera, straight at me, like he knew I was watching. His face was pale, eyes hollow. He started to whisper something, but it was too quiet to hear at first. I turned up my volume, straining to listen, and that's when I heard it. He was repeating a URL over and over, a different one. My gut twisted. It felt wrong, but I wrote it down. I paused, my cursor hovering over the browser's address bar. Part of me screamed to stop, to forget the whole thing, but I didn't. I typed in the URL. It led to another page, a forum called The Viewer's Delight. The posts were all dated for the future, which didn't make any sense. And the topics were disturbing. Discussions on ways to manipulate people, detailed accounts of abductions, graphic descriptions of surgeries. The kind of stuff you hope is just sick fiction. As I scrolled, chilled to my core, a private message popped up. The user's name was just a series of numbers and letters, gibberish. The message was short. "Do you like what you see?" I didn't reply. I shut down everything, unplugged my computer, and tried to pretend it was just some hacker's idea of a prank. But later that night, I heard noises. My apartment door handle jiggled, like someone was trying to get in. I froze, listening to faint whispers through the door. It didn't stop all night. I didn't sleep. I just sat there staring at the door, clutching a baseball bat. The next day, I found a note under my door, just one sentence. "Did you enjoy the show?" No signature, no explanation. Ever since then, I feel eyes on me all the time. I hear whispers when I'm alone. I'm scared to go out. I'm scared to stay in. I'm even scared to post this, but I don't know what else to do. This isn't just some dark web myth. It's my life now, and I don't know how to escape it. If you're thinking about looking up those places, those deep dark corners of the internet, just don't. Some doors are meant to stay closed. I wish I'd never opened mine. After the night of the note, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. I was the victim of an elaborate hoax, a prank taken too far. But the dread never left me. My apartment, once a haven, now felt like a trap. The shadows seemed deeper, the silence heavier. I needed answers, and there was only one place to get them, back to that damned forum. I powered up my old laptop, the one I swore I'd never use again. The battery was almost dead, forgotten in a drawer, but it still worked. I didn't want to use my new computer, paranoid it could be tracked or watched more easily. I connected to the internet, using a new VPN, layers upon layers of protection between me and whatever lurked behind the screen. Back on the forum, The Viewer's Delight, everything was as I left it. The posts, still dated in the future, dripped with menace. I scrolled, avoiding the threads, focusing on finding a clue, anything that might explain why I was targeted. As I searched, a new message notification popped up, the same gibberish username from before. "You came back. Good. You're ready for the next level." I hesitated, every instinct screaming to shut it down, but I couldn't. I needed to know. "What do you want from me?" I typed. "Meet us and find out. Are you brave enough?" The message included coordinates, a time, and a date. It was a location nearby, an abandoned warehouse known for graffiti and broken windows. The time was 3 a.m. tonight. Something about being asked if I was brave enough made my decision. Fear had kept me a prisoner in my own home. Maybe confronting this head-on was the only way out. I grabbed a flashlight, my old baseball bat, and dressed in dark clothes. If I was walking into a trap, I wasn't going in unprepared. The night was unusually cold, the wind biting through my jacket as I approached the warehouse. The place was a skeleton, all rusted metal and cracked concrete. Graffiti covered the walls, some fresh, others faded by time and weather. My flashlight's beam cut through the darkness, casting long shadows. Inside, the warehouse was even worse. The air was thick, stale, and cold. I walked deeper, my footsteps echoing off the walls until I reached the center of the building. There, arranged in a circle, were chairs. Each one had a laptop open, their screens glowing faintly in the dark. It looked like some twisted version of a board meeting. I approached one, the closest to the door. On the screen was a live feed of a room, another concrete box, but this one had a girl sitting in the chair. She looked terrified, her eyes wide and darting around. I recognized the room. It was from the first video I saw. A new message appeared on the screen. "Watch carefully. You could be next." I stared in horror as the door behind the girl opened. A figure stepped inside, hooded, face obscured. The girl's whimper filled the speakers, a sound so filled with fear it was almost tangible. The figure approached her slowly, ominously. I couldn't watch. I turned to leave, but as I did, I heard a noise behind me. Footsteps. I spun around, flashlight sweeping across the empty chairs. Nothing. But the sound continued, a slow, deliberate clack of heel on concrete. "Who's there?" I called out, voice more shaky than I intended. The footsteps stopped. A voice, cold and mocking, echoed through the warehouse. "You didn't really think you'd find answers so easily, did you?" Then the lights went out. The laptops shut down. I was plunged into darkness, the only sound my own breathing and the distant laughter of someone, or something, that knew far too much. I fumbled in the dark, my heart pounding as the echoes of that chilling laughter faded away into the silence of the abandoned warehouse. The sudden blackout had plunged me into a pitch-black nightmare, but fear fueled my senses, heightening my awareness of every small sound, the distant drip of water, the soft rustle of debris stirred by the wind. I knew I wasn't alone. Clutching the flashlight like a lifeline, I switched it on again, its beam unsteady as my trembling hands tried to hold it still. The light pierced the darkness, revealing nothing but the empty chairs and closed laptops. It felt like a setup, a twisted game, and I was the unwilling participant. I needed to get out, but the idea of retracing my steps through the maze of shadows and silence was terrifying. I decided to take a different exit, hoping to avoid whoever or whatever had turned off the lights. As I moved cautiously towards what looked like a service door, I heard it again, the soft, deliberate footsteps. This time, they were accompanied by a faint whispering, voices overlapping, discussing something I couldn't quite make out. I froze, listening, trying to locate the direction of the sounds. They seemed to be coming from all around me, as if the speakers were hidden within the walls themselves. The voices grew louder, more insistent, discussing something about a final participant and the ceremony's commencement. Panic surged through me. I wasn't just a random trespasser, I was exactly where they wanted me to be. I made a break for the door, my flashlight's beam swinging wildly as I ran. I could hear the footsteps keeping pace with me, always just a few strides behind. I slammed into the service door, shouldering it open, and stumbled out into the cold night air. The relief of being outside was short-lived. I looked back at the warehouse just in time to see several figures standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the faint light from inside. They didn't follow. They just stood there, watching as I ran. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, parked a few blocks away. I locked the doors the second I was inside, heart racing, breath coming in gasps. I tried to convince myself it was over, that I'd escaped, but the truth was, I'd left with more questions than answers. Who were they? What did they want with me? The voices, the setup, it was all too orchestrated to be random. That night, back in the supposed safety of my apartment, the real terror took hold. It started with my phone vibrating non-stop. Text messages flooded in, each one just an image, but all too familiar. The screenshots of the video streams from the laptops in the warehouse. The girl, the room, the chair. And then, a new image. A photo of me, standing in the warehouse, taken from behind without my knowledge. The message was clear. I was being watched long before I even knew I was part of their game. Sleep became impossible. Every sound was a potential threat. Every shadow could be hiding a watcher. The psychological torment was relentless. As days passed, the messages continued. Some days they were just images, other days, videos, clips of me in various places, always from a distance, as if to remind me there was nowhere I could go that they couldn't follow. I became paranoid, jumping at the slightest noise, seeing threats in every corner. The invasion of my life was methodical, a slow poison eroding my sense of safety. I knew I had to face this head-on if I ever wanted to reclaim my life. I needed to find out who they were and what they wanted, and for that, I had to go deeper into their world than I ever thought possible. But first I needed help. I couldn't do this alone anymore. I reached out to an old friend who was a private investigator. It was a long shot, but at this point, I was desperate. As I explained everything to him over the phone, his silence on the other end spoke volumes. When he finally spoke, his voice was grave. "You've stumbled into something big, something dangerous, but I'll help you. We need to meet in person, somewhere public." We set a time and place. I was about to hang up when he added, "And bring all the evidence you've got. We're going to need it." That meeting would either be the beginning of the end or just the end. Either way, I was walking into it with my eyes wide open, ready to face whatever horrors awaited, because now I wasn't just fighting for my sanity, I was fighting for my life. I met my friend, the private investigator, at a bustling cafe downtown. The place was packed, the air filled with the clatter of dishes and the murmur of conversations. Perfect for a meeting where sensitive information might be exchanged without attracting undue attention. I spotted him seated at a corner table, a laptop open in front of him, his gaze alert as he watched the crowd. The moment I approached, he motioned for me to sit down quickly and keep my voice low. "We don't have much time," he said without preamble. "From what you've told me, you've tangled with a group that's proficient in cyber surveillance and psychological manipulation. We need to act fast." I handed him a USB drive containing all the messages, photos and videos I'd received. He connected it to his laptop, his fingers flying over the keys as he worked to trace the origins of the communications. His brow furrowed as he worked, a testament to the complexity of the task. As he worked, I couldn't help but glance around nervously, half expecting to see one of those shadowy figures from the warehouse lurking nearby. But there was nothing out of the ordinary. Just people enjoying their coffee, oblivious to the dark undercurrents pulling at the edges of my reality. "Got something," my friend finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was tense as he turned the laptop around to show me the screen. The digital footprints lead to a server located in a remote part of the city, but it's well guarded, not just physically, digitally too. This is no amateur operation. It's big, organized. "What do we do?" I asked, feeling a mix of fear and anger. "We need more information before we make a move. I suggest we put you under surveillance protection while I dig deeper. It's not safe for you to go back to your life as if nothing's happened."
His suggestion sent a chill down my spine, but I knew he was right. I was in too deep to simply walk away now. I agreed, and we set up a plan. I would stay at a safe house while he continued the investigation. As we left the cafe, I felt the weight of eyes on me. Paranoia, perhaps, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched.
The safe house was a nondescript apartment in a quiet suburb, far removed from my usual haunts. It felt isolating, being there, cut off from the world, but it was better than the constant fear of being followed. Days turned into nights, and each passing hour stretched taut with tension. Late one evening, as I sat flipping through TV channels trying to distract myself, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Watching you try to hide is amusing." I froze, the remote slipping from my fingers. They knew. Despite all our precautions, they still found a way to reach me. I called my friend, panic edging my voice as I told him about the message. "They're taunting us," he said, his tone grim. "Stay put. I'm going to push forward with the next phase of our plan earlier than expected." The next morning, he arrived with 2 more people he introduced as specialists in digital forensics and security. They set up their equipment, turning the living room into a makeshift command center. Screens lit up, data streamed in real time, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like we were the ones watching, not just the watched. As they worked, I could see snippets of data, chat logs, transaction records, encrypted files being slowly decrypted. The scale of the operation was unlike anything I had ever imagined. This wasn't just about surveillance or intimidation. It was bigger, more sinister. Then, one of the specialists called us over. "You need to see this," he said, pointing to a video feed on one of the screens. It was a live feed, a room filled with monitors, each displaying different locations, different people. My blood ran cold as I realized what it was, a surveillance hub. But for what purpose I couldn't yet understand. My friend met my eyes, his expression hard. "We're dealing with something that goes beyond just a few creepy internet stalkers. This is organized crime, possibly with connections that are dangerously high up. We need to be careful, but we also need to move fast." That night, as we planned our next move, I knew that we were no longer just trying to solve a mystery. We were gearing up for a confrontation, and there was no guarantee that we would all make it through unscathed. But backing down was not an option, not anymore. I was ready to fight, to bring whatever shadows we were up against into the light. The realization of the magnitude of what we were up against settled heavy in the room, a tangible pressure that seemed to make the air itself denser. With each new piece of evidence, the layers of the network we were uncovering became more complex and chilling. The people being monitored were not random. They were selected with purpose, part of a larger, sinister agenda that we were only beginning to understand. Our plan was risky, but necessary. Armed with the data from our makeshift command center, we decided to strike at the heart of their operations, the surveillance hub we had identified. My friend coordinated with local authorities, but we kept the circle tight, aware that corruption or leaks could compromise everything. The night of the raid, a storm was brewing, the sky an ominous canvas of roiling clouds and sporadic rain that seemed to echo the chaos of our mission. We arrived at the location, an innocuous-looking industrial complex on the outskirts of the city, under cover of darkness. The rain muffled our movements as we moved in, tactical gear shielding us from the worst of the downpour. The building was more fortified than we anticipated, security cameras, motion sensors, and reinforced doors. The digital forensics expert worked quickly, bypassing electronic locks and disabling alarms, while the rest of us maintained a tight perimeter. Every second outside increased the risk of being discovered. Once inside, the true scale of their operations became apparent. The hub was a labyrinth of technology and terror. Screens lined one wall, each displaying different parts of the world, their reach far beyond just our city or country. Files, documents and equipment filled the room, evidence of a network that was not just national but global. We gathered as much evidence as we could, downloading data, taking photographs and securing physical documents. The specialists were in their element, but I felt a creeping dread. This was too easy. Something wasn't right. That's when it happened. The lights went out, plunging us into darkness, and the sound of the storm was suddenly accompanied by another, more frightening sound, the unmistakable click of weapons being readied. "Get down!" my friend shouted, just as the flashbangs went off. Blinded and disoriented, we scrambled for cover, the sounds of gunfire muffled by the ringing in my ears. They had been waiting for us, prepared for an intrusion. The firefight was chaotic. Amidst the flashes of gunfire and shouts, I could barely distinguish friend from foe. We were pinned down, outgunned, but not outmaneuvered. My friend, ever the strategist, managed to lead a few of us to a more defensible position, covering the specialists as they continued to secure the data. It was a standoff that felt like it lasted hours, but in reality, it was only minutes. Reinforcements arrived, the authorities we had tipped off finally breaching the facility and tipping the scales in our favor. When it was over, the hub was secured, and several members of the network were in custody. The room was a wreck, screens shattered, equipment destroyed, but the evidence was intact. We had succeeded, but at a cost. The reality of the danger had never been more apparent. In the aftermath, as investigations began and the depth of the conspiracy started to unravel, I was left with a profound sense of unease. We had cut off one head of the Hydra, but how many more remained? The world felt different now, darker and more complex. I returned home eventually, the once familiar streets now laden with the knowledge of what lurked in the shadows. My involvement had changed me, opened my eyes to the layers beneath our everyday reality. I was more cautious, always aware, always watching. But I also felt a strange resolve. If my story reaches even one person, let it be a warning and a call to action. The dark web is not a playground. It is a doorway to depths that are best left unexplored. And if you ever find yourself peering into its shadows, remember, some doors, once opened, can never be closed.